All right, hello everyone. For the first chapter, since we're online this week, I'm just gonna record a lecture since I think it makes more sense just to have you guys be able to watch it on your own time rather than doing it live in Zoom or whatever. The first chapter is pretty straightforward. Definitely just an introduction chapter to a research methods class. So just trying to explain why research is important. Hopefully all of you at this level, you're in college, you understand the importance of research. If you're psych majors, you might have even done some research already in some introductory psych classes or whatever it may be. So this chapter is super straightforward, going to be a short lecture. I'm going to say this throughout the class, but I highly recommend that you read the textbook. I think this text does an awesome job of explaining everything, and is a text that honestly I think is kind of enjoyable to read. I know a lot of textbooks are not that fun, but this one, genuinely, it's not too bad, and the chapters go pretty quickly, and I just think they give great examples. It just it just makes sense. So definitely read the text, and this is just going to be a short lecture. So first slide. Why research is important? Again, obviously, you should already understand why research is important. Research, guides the way we see the world. It helps us understand why things are happening and why things are, working the way that they do. And a lot of times people are get kind of confused, I think, with psychology, not understanding that psychology is actually a type of science, right? The psychology department just renamed the department to the Department of Psychological Science instead of just the Department of Psychology. So I think there's really a push to get, you know, the connotation of psychology away from just people, talking to someone about your feelings and really understanding that there's a science behind, psychology and, why psychologists work the way that they do, why they do the things that they do, right? Understanding it's not just people thinking, oh, yeah, this will work, and understand there's actually science behind it. And what science is, as hopefully all of you know, is it's just research, right? So it's trying to figure out why things are happening and doing it in a controlled way, to try to, explain things that we don't understand. So since psychology is science and science is research, psychology ultimately is research as well, which is why we are taking a research methods of psychology class, right? So there's two ways that we can interact with research. So we can either produce research or we can consume research. So producers of research wouldn't be your general public, right? So people who produce research are people like you who are taking psychology classes, doing, little research projects within these classes, people working in research labs at universities, or other places as well. In graduate school, doing, thesis work, doing research that way. So people like you, and then also in the future, maybe future you or just other people have professions as researchers, and a lot of times professors, on top of their teaching load, also run research labs. So you guys, I'm sure, know Dr. Proust, Dr. Carlson, right? Everyone in the psych department, at least tenured faculty, besides teaching, they also run their labs. So the university likes to produce research. They like to have the professors running labs and actually publishing various studies, because it makes the university important, I guess, in the big scheme of academia. So universities want to be producing research. They want to have labs that are active and doing interesting things, because it makes other people interested in the university. So professors really have a lot bigger job than just teaching, and that is research. And that's in all departments, not just psychology, biology, chemistry, any of the sciences, and even like archaeology and whatever, social sciences, whatever that stuff is. Obviously, I'm not too well-rounded in that, but they do research as well. So not just the hard sciences, and I don't like that term, but I just used it, but all sciences. So you can produce research, which again is not super common, but there's also a way to interact with research, and that's consuming research. And pretty much everyone, whether they realize it or not, is a consumer of research. So obviously, us in a university are definitely consuming research. So in all of your classes, psychology classes, chemistry classes, biology classes, history classes, whatever it is that you're taking, a lot of the things you're going to be interacting with was learned through research, right? So you're consuming that information. But outside of, college and higher education, pretty much every day, things that we see on the news, read on Facebook, see on Twitter, whatever it may be, a lot of the stuff that we're interacting with is information gained through research, whether we actually realize it or not. But you see different articles like, I don't know, drinking wine reduces chance of heart attack or something, right? So a research study was done, and that popular media took that and published this news, right? So a lot of the news we see is based on research, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But the popular press doesn't always necessarily do the best job of presenting the research findings. Okay, so pretty much everyone consumes research, obviously, in their everyday, but in the future, you guys might have careers that are really important consumers of research. So I listed some careers here. So family therapists, teachers, entrepreneurs, guidance counselors, police officers, hopefully, but also just about every person, regardless of profession, consumes research as well. But there are definitely some professions that rely on research to figure out the most effective ways of selling things. If you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're trying to start a business and you do research to figure out, which scent people like best, right? That's research that's guiding your business, or you're trying to figure out where to put your business, a storefront location, using research to figure out, the color of the sign, if that helps bring people in or not. Teachers figuring out the most effective way to teach material to a class and assess that material. Therapists obviously figure out the best treatments for different patients. Guidance counselors, police officers, a lot of different professions that you don't necessarily always think about use research every day. And this is called in psychology, especially, evidence-based treatments. So evidence-based treatments is a therapy or something that's supported by research. So there's evidence based on scientific research that something is effective or not. So if you're going to a therapist and they're doing some sort of cognitive behavioral therapy or something, the therapy that they're choosing to use, the treatment that they're choosing to use, they chose because there's research that supports that it's beneficial. Right. So if you're dealing with PTSD versus general anxiety, there might be different treatments that are more beneficial in the different conditions, right? So we always try to use treatments that are evidence-based, so their efficacy is proven or supported through research. And this also, you can think of like just general big pharma, medicine. We're not just going to give people pills or vaccines or whatever that aren't shown to actually be beneficial. We're not just injecting people with random chemicals because we feel like it, right? The medicine that we're giving people, it's an evidence-based treatment. There's evidence that supports that this treatment is beneficial and the benefits outweigh the risks. Okay? So scientists, how do they approach their work? They act as empiricists in their investigations. They use empirical knowledge, empirical ways of thinking, which we'll talk about in the next slide, to investigate. They test theories through research and they revise these theories. They take on an empirical approach to applied and basic research. Again, we'll talk about these all in a second. And they make their work public. Okay, so the first thing, empiricism, what is that? So empiricism is the theory that all knowledge is derived from sense experience, right? So to know something, you have to somehow see it, you have to hear it, you have to somehow sense that it's happening, right? Knowledge isn't some crazy, mist or something that just comes into your ear and you just know something, right? You know it because you're interacting with it, you see it happening. And empiricism was stimulated by this idea was stimulated by the rise of experimental science, developed in the 17th and 18th centuries, and expounded in particular by John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. So this is not super important, but just kind of interesting if you're interested in the history. So empiricism leads to what is known as empirical research. So empirical research, right? If empiricism is gaining knowledge through our senses, empirical research is using our senses to measure things, to see things, and doing research based on our findings, right? So using evidence from the senses, hearing, sight, or touch, or also you can use instruments that assist the senses, so thermometers that are measuring temperature, timers, scales, questionnaires, as the basis for a conclusion. The idea in empirical research is that we're actually measuring something, or counting something, seeing something happening, etc. Right? We're actually physically interacting with something happening. So empirical research, definition here, is based on observed and measured phenomena and derives knowledge from actual experience rather than just theory or belief. Okay, so you can have theories about why things are happening. You can think that, the sky's blue because X, Y, and Z, whatever you believe, right? But that's just a theory unless you have actual, data to support that, right? And empirical research is trying to get away from just, theory and belief and having people just come up with random ideas without being able to support them, which is obviously really important in science. So typically, we use the theory data cycle in science. Scientific method is kind of another name for this thing, to come up with research, to do the research, and to revise the research. So it involves asking questions that are based on theories, making predictions, and then collecting and reflecting upon data. So you start with the theory, right? So you think, why is the sky blue, right? You research questions. Well, maybe when it's more rainy, it's because there's water on the earth. I don't know. So in places there's less water, would the sky be less blue? Research design, so figure out how you would test that. You come up with a hypothesis, a prediction of what's going to happen when you look at places with more water versus less water, and you collect data. Okay, and if your data supports the theory, then that's good, right? And maybe you're going to test some more areas, figure out, some different things, do more research to try to, really prove or have your theory be supported. If you have data that does not support your theory, you might have to revise it. So, okay, well, it's not having to do with the water in the area. Maybe it has to do with the, type of terrain. There are places that are more mountainous, have bluer skies, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's a theory data cycle. So just some definitions of the different parts here. A theory is a set of statements that describes general principles about how variables relate to one another, right? So why is the sky blue? Maybe it has to do with the amount of water or the terrain, right? The blueness of the sky is a variable, and then whatever the other thing that we're trying to measure is a variable as well. Hypothesis, also known as prediction, is a specific outcome that we think we're going to observe. So if we're measuring, we think that the more water in an area, the bluer the sky. So if we go to somewhere that has more water, we'll see a bluer sky. That's the hypothesis. You're predicting, based on your theory, what the outcome of your study is going to be. And then the data is a set of observations. So going somewhere, measuring the amount of water, measuring the blueness of the sky, however you do that. So that can either support or challenge a theory. Okay. And that's the scientific process, right? Trying to figure out what's causing something to happen, and then if your results don't support your theory, then revising and coming up with new things to test. Okay, so an example that your book gives of this is some competing theories on why there's mother-infant attachment. So if baby monkeys, baby humans, whatever, are very attached to their mothers. And back, when was this? 1958. There was two competing theories of why there's mother-infant attachment. One, the cupboard theory, said babies loved their mothers because their mother was the food source. Food is necessary for survival. The babies wanted to attach to their mothers because they knew their mothers was their only way to get food, right? So that attachment was solely based around food, was the cupboard theory. And then there's the comfort theory that said that infants love their mother because it's a warm place. The mother would hold them and snuggle them and keep them, nice and warm and feeling safe and cozy. So these two theories both explained why monkeys liked to, be attached to their mother. But we didn't know, which one was necessarily true. So there's a scientific process that went down to try to figure out which theory would be supported. So the researchers, Harlow was his last name. I don't know his first name. But he created a setup where they made a nice plush, soft mom for the monkey. This is a baby monkey, so cute. So there's a nice plush, soft mom that the monkey would snuggle up to. I think, and there was maybe even like a heater or something where it's nice and warm and cozy for the monkey. And then there was just a wire mom that would give the monkey its food. So this would be like the cupboard theory, right? Giving the monkey food, and then over here would be the comfort theory, which would give the monkey the little snuggles, right? So then they placed the monkeys into the test to see if they preferred the mom because it was nice and warm and soft, or because it gave it the food. And these researchers did find that the monkey preferred the nice, snuggly, warm mom, and only went to the mom that had food when it needed food, right? So this supported the comfort theory of mother-infant attachment, which is just an example of a scientific process, right? Looking at theories, maybe there's two competing theories, trying to figure out why something is happening. Okay, so there's a bunch of different scientific theories, right? There'd be multiple theories trying to explain the same phenomenon. And there are certain things that you need for a scientific theory to be good, right? Anyone can come up with some crazy theory trying to explain something, but if it's a good scientific theory, it's always going to have certain things. So first, it has to be supported by data, right? So some sort of research has to be done to support this theory, right? You can think of whatever theory you want. If it's not supported by data, it's not really a scientific theory, right? It's just a crazy theory, not important, not significant, whatever. The second thing is that it has to be falsifiable, which means the theory must lead to a hypothesis that when tested could actually fail to support the theory. So you need to have a theory be able to be proven wrong, right? So you have to have a way to show that that theory is not correct. So an example of that is you have a theory that, tinfoil hats protect against government mind reading or something, right? That's not falsifiable because you could wear a tin hat and say, oh, like nothing's changed. Not wearing a tin hat's nothing changed, because you can't measure the government's mind reading capability, right? At least not yet. There's no way to like prove that wrong. So that's not a good scientific theory. There has to be something that we can actually measure or actually see, some empirical data to either support or refute our theories. Okay, so falsifiable is really important. And then good scientific theories have parsimony, which the definition is basically the simplest solution is the best. So if we have a simple theory that predicts the data as well as a more complicated theory, then typically you go with a more parsimonious or the more simple theory. Okay, so for say the mother-infant attachment, say we have the comfort theory, which just says the monkeys like a nice warm spot, nice cozy spot, they feel safe. We can have another theory that is more complicated. Say the infants like the mothers that are, comfy, not just because they're comfy, but because they have that, difference of textures. Their mom has a soft nose, and then it has the soft hands, and then the furry belly, and then the mother has, a big tail, and, you know, basically saying the same thing. The monkeys like the moms because they're nice and soft, but just as unnecessarily complicated, right? So that was kind of probably a bad example. But the simplest solution is the best. Don't overcomplicate the theories. If there's a simpler way to explain it, that's kind of saying the same thing, right? So parsimony is just the simplest theory is the best. And good scientific theories don't prove anything, right? So you're going to have theories that are supported or not supported. We never have proof of anything because there's still always more science to be done, right? We're looking at the evidence, figuring out if we have data that's supporting the theory or consistent. So we can have data that supports the theory or that's consistent with the theory, or we can have data that is inconsistent or does not support a theory. But a theory, we don't have data that proves something is correct. We don't know for sure that a theory is going to be, proving that the sky is blue because of water, whatever it may be, right? There's always more science that we can do. Okay, so when we're going through that scientific cycle, the theory data cycle, there's a bunch of different types of research questions that we can ask. So we'll talk about this definitely later on in the semester. But there's a variety of different questions that we can ask, and they might all relate to the same theory, the same hypothesis, but there are different complexities, right? So we have a basic research, translational research, and applied research. So applied research is conducted in order to solve practical problems. Applied means that this research is directly applied to finding a solution like in a real world problem. Basic research is just to enhance the general body of knowledge about a particular topic, right? So if we're thinking about, how does meditating help, does meditating like help learning, right? Can we have our students in our school meditate, and will help retain information? So applied research has our school's new meditation program help students focus longer on their math lessons. So looking at the, problem in a real world setting, applying, the information that we have to try to figure out a real world solution. Where basic, what parts of the brain are activated when experienced meditators are meditating, right? So just trying to understand the basic way things work. So not necessarily applying meditation to a practical outcome, but just trying to understand, like, okay, what is meditating really doing, right? So that's very basic, just trying to understand the basic mechanisms of a process, where applied, again, is trying to apply it to the real world. And then we have in the middle translational research, which is kind of like a bridge from basic to applied, which findings from basic research are used to develop more practical applications. So in a laboratory study, can meditation improve college students' GRE scores? So this isn't applied because we are in a controlled setting. We're controlling what's going on, right? We're in a laboratory. We're giving, we have a comparison group, students in either a meditating group or a non-meditating group, taking the GRE afterwards, trying to figure out if that meditation can improve the scores. Whereas applied is we're looking at implicating meditation in an entire school and looking at how it affects students in the real world. Okay, so basic translational and applied research, those are terms that you should definitely know. Pretty straightforward though. Scientists dig deeper, right? We should all know this. So when they're doing research, they're not just looking at one thing, doing something, finding their theory with support and saying, "Oh, yep, that's good. I understand this now," right? So they're looking at questions that dig deeper. So why does this occur? So even if they go somewhere and trying to figure out why the sky's blue, I don't know why I keep going to this example, right? They don't just find, oh, yeah, that supports my theory. Where there's more water, the sky is bluer. No. After they find that, they ask more questions. Why is this happening? So they try to figure out different things that they can measure to try to figure out why it's going on. When does it happen the most? So is this um, always happening, or is it only happening in certain areas? Or anywhere in the world where there's more water, is the sky going to be bluer? For whom does this apply? So this would be obviously not applying to the sky and water, but saying, is this information that I just gathered, can I generalize this to the entire population, or is it only for a select few people? And what are the limits? So if there's more water, is the sky going to be more blue? There's no limits to that? Or is there going to be a point where even if we increase the amount of water, the sky won't turn bluer, right? So not only finding why things are happening, but then digging deeper and making sure that it's consistent. There's no extraneous variables, not something else going on that's maybe causing this to happen, right? So you're going to continue to ask questions and dig deeper. And in psychology, we do this all the time. Okay. And the last thing that's really important about scientists is that they share their research, right? So there's something called journals, which hopefully all of you know about, but they're periodicals that typically are published every month. And the articles and journals are peer reviewed and written by qualified contributors or scientists. So the whole point of doing the research is to publish it and make it accessible to other scientists so that we can build upon the knowledge that we have, um, and, test everything that we can think of to test. So these journals are places where peer reviewed articles are published. And we'll talk about these more in a minute. And journals are very different than just journalism, right? Journalism we can think of as the popular media or popular press. So this is what we're reading in magazines, newspaper, online, what's on the radio or TV, right? So the information that we're getting daily, these are written by journalists. And the audience is the general public, not, scientific papers that are written for scientists. Journalism is great because it gets lots of information to the general public, but a lot of times the information might not be as accurate, or it might be watered down, it might be exaggerated, right? There's a lot of risks of having journalism report science, right? They can have clickbait titles that are just hugely inaccurate, but just to try to get bigger audiences, because that's what the journalism people want, journalists want. You can overgeneralize different scientific studies. They might only publish part of a story, right? So maybe they find one part of a scientific study interesting, but ignore some other data that's actually really important to the bigger picture. And a lot of times in journalism, a risk is that they say that the science is proven, right? New study shows that wine causes, decreased chance of heart attack, right? So if someone's to read that, the general public, it really sounds like that's like a fact, right? They're saying that this causes that. That's proven. When that's not necessarily the case. But again, there are benefits. You get science reaching a wider audience, so hopefully the general public gets more of an idea of what's actually happening, new updates of scientific studies, helping people stay informed. It could also help generate interest in different topics that are more sciencey than people normally get to see. So there are benefits, but there's also definitely risks to journalism. One risk, and normally we do an activity in class with this, is called the Mozart effect, which is the loss of accuracy when going from journal to journalism. So the Mozart effect can be seen if we like play a game of telephone, which is what we normally do in class, but we can't do it now. But if I tell someone something and then everyone whispers it in their neighbor's ear, by the end of the time, by the end of the, whatever, the last person, what they think they heard is very different from what I said. Okay, and I've done this in classes before, and every time I have no idea where it goes wrong. We can go back and track it though, but the Mozart effect is that it's not accurate when it gets to the end because it's been watered down. It's been, the scientific study that had all this information is sent to someone. They read it, take a bunch of information out, they send it on. It gets watered down more and more. Things are changed, little things are exaggerated or slightly tweaked. And at the end, it's not as accurate as that original scientific source, which obviously, that makes sense. We can't have, the general public reading these scientific papers and expect them to understand what's going on. But a lot of times it can be detrimental to, publish a study and have journalists take that, water it down, and then just push it out to the masses, having something that's not accurate. So that's the Mozart effect. There's this John Oliver video. I'm not going to play it right now. The link's online, but it's just talking about scientific studies. And it's kind of interesting, so take a look at that when you have a chance. And then that's it for this first lecture. There's also going to be a activity for this week. So that's posted on Educat. So there's a Dropbox, and in that Dropbox is a little Word document with some questions you have to fill out. There's an article that is linked at the top of that and also on Educat. That is an example of a journalist taking some scientific research and publishing a popular media clickbait, perhaps, article. And the activity is just basically you going through and reading the article, coming up with some possible issues with the article. There's no correct answer, so whatever you say is fine. And then just a few other questions regarding chapter 1. And that's it for this week. You'll also have a quiz over just the material in this chapter. So that's going to be 25 points. So that will be open Thursday morning as well. So let me know if you have any questions. Great job this week. Bye, guys.